In what can only be described as a victory for the Palestinian people, the United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution calling for the International Court of Justice to weigh in on Israel's occupation and annexation. This follows a UN Commission of Inquiry report that found the demolition of Palestinian homes. Let's talk more about this with Judge Navi Pillay. She's an ad hoc judge at the International Criminal Court at The Hague and has chaired the Commission of Inquiry into the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem. Good morning, Judge Pillay. Thank you for joining me on this New Year's morning. Tell me, what does this opinion by the ICJ on Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories, what does this actually mean?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to you and all viewers. Shidaka, thank you for focusing on this. A small correction, I am an ad hoc judge in the International Court of Justice, but that's on the Myanmar issue. This is where the president of the Human Rights Council, which is the United Nations, asked me to serve as chair of this Commission of Inquiry, together with two other commissioners, Chris Sidoti from Australia and Miloon Kotari from India, both experts in their own right. And we are, of course, serving without any remuneration, and we like it that way. It reinforces our independence, and we're not answerable to anyone. Now, I welcome this resolution passed by the General Assembly yesterday by a majority of the votes, because this is what we recommended when we delivered our report to the General Assembly on October 27th. We asked for an opinion on the legality of this continuing occupation. We've always known occupation as temporary, but this has gone on for like 65 years. So it has not done before. Our mandate enabled us to look at these root causes, and we said the root cause of the conflict in Israel-Palestine and Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, is the occupation. So it's, as I said, it's a first time. It will be a very important judgment when the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, delivers it. And the importance is, if the court rules that the occupation is unlawful, and if the court addresses the request of the GA to also determine what are the responsibilities of third parties and other states who support or purport to support an illegal, unlawful activity. So that's the importance of it. It is the first time the GA has made this decision, and I feel proud because it involved a very thoroughly researched document from us, the three commissioners and our team, where we laid the factual basis, where we said there's a coercive environment against Palestinians, they are discriminated against, their lands are being taken away from them, there's a continuing process of, shall I say, land dispossession. So these are the factual situations which we say are violations of international humanitarian law.
So you mentioned that it will be a really significant judgment when it's made. How long before this judgment is made?
It could take a year or two, and I'm only saying so because I sit on that court in another matter, and I know that they have very many cases. So the GA didn't tell them do this urgently, like they did in respect of Ukraine. They asked the International Court of Justice to rule on the war situation as a matter of urgency, and they did do that in a matter of weeks. This may take a year or two, depending on the role of that court. They will call for arguments from legal representatives of both Palestine and Israel and other interested states. So it will be a long, drawn-out case. But as I said, it's historical that the General Assembly has now got this matter before the court.
So when this judgment is actually made, what is the practical ability for the ICJ to actually enforce its ruling?
No, the ICJ is, it was set up together with the United Nations to deal with mainly disputes between states and also to interpret international law. It's important that its decision precisely on this matter comes before the GA for the member states to decide on further action. So the court itself doesn't have any enforcement power.
So we know that 87 nations voted in favor of the opinion by the ICJ, with 24 members, including the United Kingdom and Germany, voting against. What are the broader implications of this, if there are any implications, and how did South Africa vote?
Oh, South Africa was in the 87, voted for this resolution. So we welcome that the majority of states did. I wouldn't know why like 58 odd states abstained, including several African countries. I imagine they all have relationships with Israel, trade or buying weapons, whatever it is. Those who voted against the resolution, they didn't give any reason. I'm afraid when we delivered our report, we were attacked by the Israeli ambassador in the GA room, in the halls where we delivered this. They attacked us and called us, the ambassador called us Jew haters, anti-Semites, and just all kinds of abuse. None of them addressed the report in substance. So all the allegations we have made remains unchallenged, even by those states who voted against the resolution. Didn't tell us why. In fact, it surprised me when the Israeli ambassador and some other ambassadors of states said the report itself is anti-Semitic. Now, that's really stretching it too far. But as we know in law, if there are allegations and you haven't challenged that, you don't dispute it, the allegations stand. And we're not just making allegations. We heard from a wide range of activists from Israel and Palestine, experts, civil society organizations, people who have written about this matter for many years. So what we've said, that the occupation is the root cause of the conflict, is nothing new. It's now being stated by the Commission, backed up by facts, backed up by a true interpretation of the law.
Now, the last time the ICJ weighed in on Israel's occupation of Palestine was in 2004. It's taken 18 years for another resolution to be passed. Why such an extensive delay?
Well, I think that is what the people of Palestine have been asking daily. They feel the international community has just let these violations, attacks, the killing of Palestinians just go on and on and on. It's unbelievable that this occupation has lasted for so many years, close to 70 years. The matter cannot be sent to the ICJ unless some state brings that complaint to the ICJ, or better still, the General Assembly or the Security Council. So a lot of political, regional interest, I believe, play a role here in why the General Assembly has not acted on this before. But I'm hoping that our very comprehensive, fact-based report has now been useful to them and may be useful to the court.
Now, we know that the last ruling by the ICJ was rejected by Israel. Hypothetically, should it make a similar, or should it react the same way or make a similar ruling this time, and it's once again rejected by Israel? What then? Where to thereafter?
You're quite right. The 2014 resolution was about the war. And the court said that Israel is building facts on the ground, where the occupation itself could be questioned. That was a little line they threw in there in that 2014 judgment. And you are quite right that no action is being taken to get Israel to implement not only the ICJ's previous decision, but to implement all the recommendations made by the General Assembly, by the Security Council to end settlements, for instance. The Security Council said these settlements being built by Israel are unlawful under international law. And you are quite right. There's been no implementation or any kind of action taken by Israel. So we can only do what we can within these limits, within all these political constraints that seem to be in the minds of member states. I hope that they will act jointly if we have the highest court, their mechanisms, the UN's judicial mechanism ruling on this matter. So if the court says it's unlawful, then it's a very serious situation. It cannot be ignored. And I agree with you that from past conduct, Israel will probably ignore this decision if it goes against it as well. Well, then the matter is before the General Assembly, will come before the Security Council if a state is not observing and implementing a decision of the International Court of Justice.
Thank you so much for sharing that insight with us. It's something that we'll definitely have to keep our eye on and see how this all unfolds in the next year or two. That was Judge Navi Pillay. She's an ad hoc judge at the International Criminal Court in The Hague.